They were buried without coffins, without markers, without names. And yet, thousands of years later, they returned, almost untouched, rising from the peat bogs with their skin intact and secrets still hidden beneath it. Welcome back to Historical Horror, a series in which I draw upon my two absolute favorite subjects to bring you the strangest, creepiest, darkest tales from our past. Today, we're heading deep into the wetlands to meet the bog bodies. They began turning up in the 18th and 19th century, startling finds pulled from the earth during peat harvesting. Perfectly preserved human remains, often curled in the fetal position or splayed like offerings. Some still had hair, fingernails, eyelashes even. One man's last meal was still in his stomach. The conditions in peat bogs are weirdly perfect for preserving flesh. The cold temperatures, the oxygen-starved environment, and the presence of sphagnum moss, which acts as a natural antibacterial agent and tanning solution. The result? Soft tissue preserved for millennia, but with bones often dissolved away by acidic water. That's why so many bog bodies look desiccated, flattened, their skeletons missing, but their skin and organs intact. They aren't mummies in the Egyptian sense. They weren't embalmed. They were pickled in the earth itself. So, before I get into the next part, let me introduce you to some of the more famous bog bodies. And apologies in advance because I will definitely be butchering some of these names, I know. This is Tolland Man, found in Denmark in 1950, aged about 40 at the time of his death, which is estimated in around the 4th century BC. This is Grabal Man, found in Denmark in 1952, aged around 30 at the time of his death. This is Boxton Man, found in Sweden in 1936, aged about 35 to 40 at the time of his death. This is Yeed Girl, found in the Netherlands in 1897, age 16 at the time of her death. And these next three I've actually had the privilege of meeting in person at the National Museum of Ireland. This is Old Crahan Man, found in Ireland in 2003, aged early 20s at the time of his death. This is Gaelic Man, found in Ireland in 1821, aged about 25 at the time of his death. This is Cloney Cabin Man, found in Ireland in 2003, aged early 20s at the time of his death. No one quite knew what to make of them. Were they murder victims? Human sacrifices? Executed criminals? Whatever the case, many bog bodies show signs of extreme violence. For example, Tolland Man was hanged. O'Crohan Man had his nipples sliced, possibly a ritual to strip him of kingship. Gaelic Man and Boxten Man were each found with 2 stakes plunged through their bodies, pinned down in what archaeologists theorize was a way of ensuring that they stayed in the bog after death. Grabal Man had his from ear to ear. Cloney Cabin Man took an axe to the head and was then disemboweled, though the dissection of his upper and lower halves is actually due to the modern peat harvesting machine that stumbled across him in 2003. And then there's Yid Girl. The 16-year-old girl was stabbed, strangled, and may possibly have had one side of her head shaved as well. Some bog bodies show evidence of stabbing, garroting, and bludgeoning all at once. It's called overkill. To some archaeologists, this suggests ritual sacrifice, a way to appease the gods, a punishment for oath breaking, or the removal of a failed king. In Irish, Celtic, and Scandinavian folklore, the bog may have been sacred, a threshold space between worlds. Bogs are liminal spaces, places between land and water, life and death, the perfect place for offerings. The theory of ritual sacrifice is supported by the fact that quite a few of these bog people appear to have been from the upper classes of society, evident through their manicured fingernails and high levels of protein-based nourishment, as well as the close proximity of their remains to known sacred and inaugural kingship sites. During a time when kings and rulers were believed to be responsible for the very whims of nature, for fair and foul harvests, it was not uncommon for a ruler to be sacrificed in times of extreme deprivation or hardship. Other archaeologists have suggested that the remains are those of criminals, victims of punitive execution who were killed horrifically and cast into the bog as punishment for socially deviant behavior. Whatever the case, the incredible level of preservation allows us to observe and, in some sense, relive the violence of these ancient people's last moments. For instance, Tolland Man and Yid Girl were both found with ropes still tied around their necks, and Tolland Man's face, with its pained grimace, was so astoundingly well preserved that when he was discovered in 1950, he was actually mistaken for a recent murder victim. Some believe these victims weren't just executed, they were symbolically unmade, their identity, power, and past erased, their bodies offered to the earth. Their deaths weren't just physical. They were ritual acts of forgetting, of erasure. They went into the earth nameless and came back, not ghosts exactly, but history itself, half buried, telling stories no one remembers. And if anyone is interested and wants me to go into more detail or to do a deep dive on any one of the bog bodies we met, let me know in the comments. It's really interesting. Because the bodies were so well preserved, they actually can tell us so much. In a lot of cases, archaeologists are able to reconstruct their final moments. Even the way they lived in some cases, we can determine things like diet, guess at social status, and from that information, we can tease out all sorts of other context clues. Yeah, so if anyone's interested, let me know. We can do deep dives.